Just days ago, headlines broke of a chilling discovery in Hollywood. A Tesla, abandoned for days, towed to a yard. And inside its front trunk, the decomposed body of a missing 15-year-old girl. Even more shocking, the car was registered to rising music star D4vd. This isn't a cold case. This is happening right now. And the truth is only beginning to come to light. Welcome back to Truth That Haunts. Before we dive deeper, drop a comment and let me know, where are you watching from and what time of day is it? I always love seeing the range of places and times our haunted stories reach. And it's a way for us to feel connected as we uncover these mysteries together. And if you want to stay on top of this story as it unfolds, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this with someone who loves uncovering mysteries. Because together, we'll follow this haunting story as new details emerge. It is a Tuesday morning, September 16th, 2025. The sun is already baking the asphalt of a private tow yard in Hollywood, California. The air is thick with the usual urban symphony, the distant hum of the 101 freeway, the cry of a gull, the metallic clang of a chain-link fence in the breeze. For the workers here, it is just another day in the repository of other people's misfortunes. A graveyard for cars that have been in accidents, repossessed, or simply forgotten. But today the routine would be shattered. Today, the familiar would become forever sinister. One of the yard workers is making his rounds, checking VIN numbers against a clipboard. He moves with the practiced, weary gait of a man who has seen it all. He stops before a sleek, modern silhouette, a Tesla Model 3. Its white paint is dusty. Its sleek lines a stark contrast to the beat-up sedans and trucks around it. It was towed weeks ago after being found illegally parked in a red zone outside a trendy Silver Lake recording studio. Just another piece of expensive clutter, waiting for an owner who never came. As he gets closer, a new note enters the symphony of the yard. It's faint at first, almost masked by the smell of gasoline and hot concrete, but it's there. A sweet, cloying, deeply unnatural odor. It's the smell of decay, of biology asserting its grim truth against the sterile, futuristic shell of the electric vehicle. His steps slow, his nose wrinkles. The smell is wrong. It's not a dead rat. It's not spoiled food left in a sun-baked interior. This is something else. Something heavier. Something worse. His eyes are drawn to the car's front end. Unlike a traditional car, there's no grille, no radiator. Just a smooth, seamless panel. The front trunk. A storage compartment meant for groceries, gym bags, the innocuous detritus of daily life. He notices something else. A faint, dark, almost sticky residue is seeping from the very edge of the hood seam. A grotesque tear against the perfect white paint. A cold dread, completely separate from the morning heat, begins to crawl up his spine. He calls over his supervisor. The two men stand there in the quiet yard, the smell now an inescapable presence. A third silent and horrifying witness. They know. On some primal level, they already know what they are going to find, but the human mind fights against such darkness. It must be something else, anything else. With a trembling hand, the supervisor pulls out his key fob. The law requires an inventory of valuables and impounded vehicles. He has to look. He triggers the hood release. There's a soft electric thunk. The seal breaks. And the world stops. The smell erupts, a visceral, physical wave of putrescence that hits them like a wall. It's a smell that doesn't just assault the nose. It coats the tongue, it claws at the back of the throat, but the smell is nothing compared to the sight. Inside the pristine, carpeted compartment, meant for a spare tire and a charging cable, is a form. A human form, curled in a fetal position, wrapped in a heavy, dark plastic tarp, but not nearly well enough to contain the horrifying reality of what was inside. Decomposition had done its relentless work. The body was beyond recognition, a tragic, skeletal sculpture shrouded in the terrible evidence of its own ending. The 911 call that followed was fragmented, breathless. A voice shaking with a shock so profound it was audible, trying to form words around an unspeakable horror. There's a body in the car. Within minutes, the serene tow yard was transformed. The wail of sirens cut through the hum of the city. Police cruisers, their lights painting the dusty cars in frantic flashes of red and blue, converged on the scene. The area was cordoned off with stark yellow tape that fluttered in the breeze, a definitive border between the everyday world and a brand new crime scene. Homicide detectives, their faces set in grim, professional masks, moved in. The air grew still, heavy with the gravity of their discovery. This was no accident. This was not a place someone would choose to be. This was a hiding place, a tomb. The investigation began with the cold, hard facts of the vehicle itself, a routine check of the license plate and VIN number, a process done 1,000 times a day meant to identify a car, to link it to an owner. But this time, the return information sent a different kind of shockwave through the investigation. The Tesla was registered to David Anthony Burke. The name, for a moment, might not have registered with the veteran detectives. But for the younger officers, for anyone plugged into the modern, viral heartbeat of the internet, it resonated instantly. David Anthony Burke is better known to the world as D4vd, the indie music sensation. The bedroom producer from Texas who rocketed to global fame on the strength of his haunting, lo-fi anthems of heartbreak and anxiety. His songs, like the viral hit Romantic Homicide, have been streamed billions of times. He is the archetype of the new age celebrity, born online, beloved by Gen Z, his face splashed across social media and music blogs. An artist who sang of emotional pain to an audience of millions, and now his car was a coffin. The collision was absolute. The surreal, almost fictional juxtaposition of sleek celebrity and brutal, real-world horror. This wasn't a tabloid headline. This was a concrete reality. A young life ended and secreted away in the most impersonal of spaces, belonging to one of the most publicly personal artists of the era. The questions began to spin, a maelstrom of awful possibilities. Was this a terrible coincidence, a macabre framing, or something far, far darker? How does a body end up there? How does it go unnoticed for days, for weeks? And the most central, most haunting question of all, the one that would become the engine of this entire tragic mystery: how does the body of a missing teenager end up in the car of a celebrity? The identity of the victim would soon be confirmed, adding another layer of profound sorrow to the case. But in those first few hours in the blinding Los Angeles sun, all that was known was this: a young life had been erased, and its final resting place pointed a silent, accusing finger at a figure the world thought it knew. The investigation into the death of Celeste Rivas had begun, and it started in the last place anyone would ever think to look. In the stark clinical language of a police report, she was a body, a Jane Doe, a set of forensic details to be cataloged. But in the world, in the hearts of those who knew and loved her, she was so much more. She was Celeste Maria Rivas, just 15 years old. To understand the profound tragedy of this case, we must first push past the horror of the discovery and remember the life that was stolen. We must meet the girl behind the headline. Celeste was a sophomore at North Hollywood High School. By all accounts, she was quiet, observant, a girl who often seemed more comfortable in the margins than in the spotlight. She had long, dark hair that she was forever tying up and then letting down again, and thoughtful brown eyes that seemed to take in everything around her. She was an artist, not in a professional sense, but in a way so many teenagers are filling the margins of her notebooks with intricate sketches, designing elaborate fan art for her favorite anime series, and crafting delicate, whimsical jewelry from polymer clay that she would sell online to a small but dedicated following. She lived with her mother, Elena, and her younger brother, Miguel, in a small, well-kept apartment in Van Nuys. Their home was filled with the evidence of a close-knit family photos from trips to the beach, Miguel's soccer trophies on the bookshelf, and Celeste's art supplies perpetually claiming a corner of the living room. Her mother, Celeste Rivas, described her daughter as having an old soul. She was empathetic, often worrying about the well-being of her friends, and possessed a dry, witty sense of humor that would surface once she felt comfortable enough to let her guard down. She dreamed of one day becoming a graphic designer, of moving to New York City. They were the big, beautiful, fragile dreams of a 15-year-old girl, full of potential, a future waiting to be written. But that future was erased on the evening of April 5th, 2024. Celeste had told her mother she was going to a friend's house to study for an upcoming algebra test. She was last seen leaving her apartment building at approximately 6:45 p.m. She was wearing dark jeans, black Vans sneakers, and a light gray hoodie with the logo of a local indie band, the Echo Whispers, printed across the chest. She carried a worn purple backpack. She never arrived at her friend's house. When she didn't answer her phone later that night, a deep primal fear began to take root in her mother's heart. This was not like Celeste. By 11 p.m., that fear had blossomed into full-blown panic. The phone calls to friends yielded nothing. The drags around the neighborhood revealed empty streets. The waiting, the unbearable waiting began. Celeste Rivas filed a missing persons report with the LAPD that same night. Thus began a parent's worst nightmare, stretched out over months. A nightmare of frantic searching, of distributing flyers with Celeste's smiling face on them until the paper felt thin, of tearful pleas on local news broadcasts, of following up on every potential tip, no matter how faint or far-fetched. The community rallied. Search parties were organized. Social media was flooded with #FindCeleste. But as weeks turned into months, the trail, which was faint to begin with, seemed to grow colder. The leads dried up. The case, though never officially closed, grew quiet. The agonizing silence of not knowing became a constant, painful presence in the Rivas household. How does a 15-year-old girl vanish without a trace in the middle of a modern, sprawling metropolis? It was the question that haunted her family, her friends, and the detectives assigned to the case. Every possible scenario, from the tragic to the terrifying, was considered, but there was nothing. No digital footprint. No bank activity. No sightings. Celeste Rivas had simply disappeared until September 16th, 2025, 17 months later. In the grim confines of the coroner's office, the process of identification began. Dental records provided a match, but it was a smaller, more intimate detail that offered a heartbreaking confirmation. On her right hand, on the index finger, Celeste had a tattoo. It was a small, simple one she'd gotten just a few months before she vanished. A single word in a delicate script font. It read, "She." A secret between her and her closest friends. A private joke. A piece of her identity now used by authorities to confirm her death. The quiet girl, marked by a plea for silence, in the most cruel and ironic of twists. The confirmation shattered what was left of her family's world. The torturous uncertainty of the last year and a half was replaced with the devastating finality of loss. The hope that had stubbornly flickered even in the darkest moments was extinguished, replaced by a grief so profound it is impossible for us to truly comprehend. Celeste was no longer a missing person. She was a victim. And her story, the story of a quiet artist from Van Nuys, was now inextricably and bafflingly linked to the world of viral fame and internet-born music. A world that, by all accounts, she had nothing to do with. How does a girl whose life soundtrack, Was likely the hum of her computer fan and the scratch of her pencil find her ending entangled with a musician heard by millions? The dissonance is jarring. It feels wrong. This is the central, haunting contradiction at the heart of the mystery. The quiet and the scream. The anonymous and the famous. The private art and the very public persona. The question was no longer just what happened to Celeste Rivas. It was now, how did her path ever cross with his? To understand the shockwave that this discovery sent through the public consciousness, we must turn our attention to the owner of the vehicle. Not just a name on a registration, but the person the world knows. We must examine the figure at the center of this growing storm. David Anthony Burke, the artist known as D4vd, his story is by now the stuff of internet legend. A young man from Houston, Texas, who began creating music not in a professional studio, but in his sister's closet. Using only his iPhone and the video game Fortnite's audio software, he crafted a uniquely raw lo-fi sound, a sound that resonated with millions. His breakout hit, 2022's Romantic Homicide, is a haunting ballad of heartbreak and disillusionment. It is a song that feels both deeply personal and universally relatable, a diary entry set to a melancholic melody, and it exploded. It became a TikTok phenomenon, a billion-stream behemoth that catapulted the quiet, unassuming teenager from his bedroom into the glaring spotlight of international fame. He was signed to a major label, toured the world, and was hailed as the epitome of a new kind of artist. Authentic, self-made, a digital native speaking the emotional language of his generation. His public persona was one of relatable anxiety and thoughtful introspection. In interviews, he came across as humble, almost surprised by his own success. He was an artist who sang about emotional pain, not physical violence. His fan base, devoted and protective, saw him as one of their own. This is the David Burke the world knew, the musician. But the car, the Tesla, introduced a dissonant, terrifying note into this narrative. The investigation revealed a strange and crucial timeline. The vehicle had not been reported stolen. It was found legally parked, but in a red zone, on a secluded overlook in the Hollywood Hills, a place known for its panoramic views of the city below. It sat there, this sleek, silent monument to modern technology, for days, then a week, then more. It became a fixture. Just another abandoned car in a city full of stories. Eventually, it was ticketed and then towed on September 3rd, taken to the private yard where its grim secret would be discovered nearly 2 weeks later. Which means for weeks, this car registered to a famous musician sat unattended in a public space. And for all that time, it held its awful contents, unseen, unchecked. The moment of discovery, as recounted by the tow yard workers, was one of surreal horror. The initial, overwhelming smell, the dark, viscous residue seeping from the seam of the frunk, the electric thunk of the latch releasing, and then the sight. Not a body immediately visible, but a shape wrapped in a heavy-duty, black plastic contractor bag, twisted and sealed at the top. The form was unmistakably human, the plastic doing little to contain the advanced stages of decomposition. It was an image of calculated concealment. This was not an accident. This was not a crime of passion committed in a visible location. This was a body hidden. This chilling fact, the method of disposal, stands in stark contrast to the publicly curated image of the car's owner. It creates a rift in reality that the public and the internet rush to fill with speculation. And in the digital age, speculation often finds its fuel in art. In the days following the grim discovery, a frantic and often morbid digital investigation began. Online sleuths and fans alike began to re-examine D4vd's entire catalog, listening not as fans, but as amateur detectives searching for clues. His songs, once heard as metaphors for emotional turmoil, were now being subjected to a literal and terrifying reinterpretation. The title of his biggest hit, Romantic Homicide, took on a newly sinister tone. Lyrics from his other songs were isolated and analyzed. Lines about guilt, about obsession, about loss previously seen as poetic were now scanned for a darker, more literal meaning. The internet began connecting dots that may never have been intended to be connected, and then a demo surfaced, or more accurately, was circulated. It's crucial at this juncture to state plainly the authenticity of this recording, its origin, and its intended meaning have not been verified by law enforcement. It exists in the murky corners of the internet, an unverified demo allegedly by D4vd. The track is a rough, unfinished recording. The audio is muddy, the production sparse, and it is titled Celeste. The lyrics, as they have been transcribed and shared across forums and social media, are fragmentary but deeply unsettling in the context of the case. They allegedly speak of a girl named Celeste. They reference a quiet girl with secrets in her eyes. One widely circulated line allegedly whispers, "I keep you close, I keep you safe, my secret in the white space." Another more chilling line is quoted as, "A tattoo on your finger, a silence that will linger." The parallels are staggering. The name, the description of a quiet demeanor, the alleged reference to a finger tattoo. For many hearing this, it felt less like a coincidence and more like a confession. But we must pause here. We must emphasize the word allegedly. This demo has not been confirmed as genuine by the artist, his representatives, or the authorities. It could be a macabre hoax, a piece of fan fiction, or an unrelated song that has been tragically and coincidentally misappropriated. The human mind is pattern-seeking, especially in the face of the senseless. We crave narrative, we crave explanation, even when the facts are not yet clear. What is undeniable, however, is the effect. This unverified demo, whether real or not, has irrevocably shaped the public perception of this case. It has taken the tragic story of Celeste Rivas and the celebrity of D4vd and fused them together in a dark and explosive synergy. It has led countless people to re-listen to his published work and hear not heartbreak, but something far more sinister. The central, haunting question now echoes not just through police stations, but through headphones and comment sections. Are we listening to the art of a troubled young man, or are we hearing something else entirely? The soundtrack to a crime? In the wake of the discovery, the machinery of justice began to turn, its gears methodical, deliberate, and designed to separate fact from fiction. The Los Angeles Police Department and the county coroner's office were now tasked with building a case from the most tragic of foundations. The first, most heartbreaking step was confirmation. Through dental records and the distinct she tattoo on her right index finger, the remains were officially identified as those of 15-year-old Celeste Rivas. Missing since April of 2024, a name was restored to the victim, ending 17 months of agonizing uncertainty for her family and beginning a new, more painful chapter of grief. The coroner's initial report, a clinical document that belies the horror it describes, listed the cause and manner of death as undetermined. The advanced state of decomposition made immediate conclusions impossible. Toxicology reports are pending. This is not unusual in cases of this nature, but it adds another layer of frustrating ambiguity. Without a clear cause of death, the official designation remains a death investigation, though the circumstances of the body's discovery leave little doubt in the minds of investigators that they are dealing with a homicide. The investigation swiftly turned to the vehicle's owner. On September 18, 2025, LAPD detectives executed a search warrant at a property in the Hollywood Hills, a residence linked to David Anthony Burke. The details of what, if anything, was seized remained sealed within the affidavit for that warrant. This is a standard procedural move designed to protect the integrity of an active investigation. Through his legal representation, Burke has stated he is cooperating fully with authorities. His management team issued a brief statement expressing their client's shock and horror at the discovery and extending their deepest sympathies to the family of Celeste Rivas. They also presented a potential alibi, stating that Burke was on a scheduled international tour throughout the entire month of August and into early September. During the period, the Tesla was sitting abandoned on the overlook. They claim he had reported the vehicle as potentially stolen to his insurance company after being unable to locate it for several weeks, a claim that is now being verified by detectives. These are the confirmed, factual pillars of the investigation so far. A body identified, a car registered to a celebrity, a searched property, an expression of cooperation. It is a framework, but one with cavernous gaps. And into these gaps, a torrent of public speculation has poured, fueled by a series of coincidences that are so specific, so narratively resonant, they feel less like chance and more like clues. These are the disturbing parallels that have transformed this case from a local tragedy into a global obsession. The most chilling of these parallels involves the tattoo. Celeste Rivas was identified by a small script tattoo on her right index finger that read, "She." Almost immediately, fans and internet investigators began circulating old social media posts and paparazzi photos of D4vd. In several of these images, on his own right index finger, a nearly identical script tattoo is visible. The same word, the same placement. The implication is deafening, a shared, intimate secret, a connection between the famous musician and the quiet girl from Van Nuys that, until now, was completely unknown. Then there are the songs. We have already discussed the unverified demo titled Celeste, but the alleged connection runs deeper than a single leaked track. Internet archivists and so-called lyric analysts have pointed to the release timeline of his official music. His breakout hit, Romantic Homicide, was released in 2022, long before Celeste's disappearance. But other songs like The Melancholic, Here With Me, or The Anxious Placebo, with their themes of longing, isolation, and holding on to something or someone you can't have been recontextualized. Listeners are now asking, were these merely the poetic expressions of a sensitive artist? Or were they something more literal, something darker? The most frequently cited example is a line from his song, The Tunnel, where he sings, "I'd hide you in the trunk of my white car so nobody can see." When first released, it was interpreted as a metaphor for protecting the relationship from the public eye. Now, heard in the context of a body discovered in the frunk of a white Tesla Model 3, the lyric feels less like a metaphor and more like a blueprint. But we must once again apply the brakes to speculation. We must practice investigative humility. The matching tattoos, while visually striking, are not definitive proof of anything other than a potential connection. The meaning behind them remains unknown. The lyrics to his songs are artistic expressions open to interpretation. The human brain is wired to find patterns, and in a case this shocking, it will find them even where none exist. A lyric about a white car is a common trope in music. A tattoo reading "Shay" is not unique. It is the job of the LAPD to determine if these parallels are meaningful coincidences or critical evidence. They are tasked with building a timeline that can withstand the immense scrutiny of a courtroom. They must establish a verifiable link between David Burke and Celeste Rivas beyond circumstantial similarities. They must determine how, when, and why Celeste's body came to be in that specific car. As it stands, the direct involvement of anyone in Celeste's death remains unverified. The authenticity of the leaked demo remains unverified. A motive remains unknown. The public narrative is being written in real time, a chaotic collage of facts, rumors, and eerie art, but the official investigation is a slower, more painstaking process. It must be. For the sake of justice for Celeste, it must be built on rock-solid evidence, not on the shifting sands of online speculation. The facts are grim but few. The questions are endless, and between them lies a chasm of uncertainty, bridged only by theory, fear, and the haunting echoes of a song. In the absence of official answers, the void fills with sound. Theories, accusations, defenses, and grief echo in a chaotic chorus across the digital landscape. The case of Celeste Rivas is no longer just a police investigation. It is a public obsession, a Rorschach test onto which people project their fears, their biases, and their desperate need for a narrative that makes sense of the senseless. Let us, with clear eyes and a commitment to humility, examine the plausible theories that have emerged. These are not conclusions, but pathways investigators must explore, each with its own set of questions. Theory A, the unwitting owner. This theory posits that David Burke is, as his team asserts, a horrified bystander. But someone else, an associate, a fan, a stranger, had access to his vehicle without his knowledge. The Tesla was left unattended for weeks. A key fob could have been copied, or the car could have been loaned and not returned. This theory asks, could a calculated killer have used a celebrity's car as the perfect hiding place, knowing its discovery would point directly away from them? It's a scenario that exploits trust and access, framing the famous for a crime they didn't commit. Theory B, the unknown connection. This is the theory that fuels most of the online speculation. It suggests that there was a private, undisclosed link between the internationally famous musician and the quiet high school sophomore. Perhaps they met online through fan communities or art forums. Perhaps there was a mutual acquaintance. This theory attempts to explain the disturbing parallels, the tattoos, the lyrics as evidence of a real and ultimately tragic relationship that existed away from the public eye. It asks the most unsettling question: how well do we truly know the artists we feel we know intimately through their work? Theory C, the tragic coincidence. This is the theory of chance. It argues that the artistic themes in D4vd's music are just that, artistic themes. That the tattoo is a common phrase chosen independently by two people. That the leaked demo is a hoax or an unrelated creation. This theory posits that Celeste Rivas was the victim of a terrible crime unrelated to the world of music, and her body was placed in the first available, secluded vehicle the perpetrator could find, a car that just happened to belong to someone whose art would later be interpreted as a confession. It is a reminder that coincidence, no matter how narratively satisfying, is a force in our universe. Theory D, the malicious third party. This theory introduces an outside actor with a motive of malice toward David Burke. Could an obsessive fan, a disgruntled former associate, or someone with a personal vendetta have committed this horrific act with the specific intention of framing the artist? It is a complex and theatrical theory, but in a world of parasocial relationships and online hatred, it cannot be entirely dismissed. Amidst these competing narratives, the public reaction has been swift and divisive. The fanbase has splintered. Some supporters defend Burke vehemently, citing his cooperative stance and the lack of direct evidence, arguing he's the victim of a monstrous coincidence and a rabid online witch hunt. Others feel a profound sense of betrayal, reevaluating every lyric, every interview, every piece of art through a lens of deep suspicion. In the industry, the silence has been deafening. Collaborators have paused projects. Playlists have been quietly edited. The machinery of fame, which once championed his authentic vulnerability, has ground to a halt, paralyzed by the gravity of the allegations and the prudence of waiting for facts. And cutting through this noise is the relentless, often invasive, glare of the media. Satellite trucks parked on quiet suburban streets. Reporters shouting questions at a grieving mother just seeking privacy. The story of Celeste's death has gone viral, but at a terrible cost to her family's right to mourn in peace. Their unimaginable loss has become content, their tragedy a topic for podcast debates and YouTube deep dives. This collision is perhaps the most haunting aspect of the entire case. It holds a dark mirror up to our culture. We live in an age where art is consumed instantly and personally, where celebrities are simultaneously put on pedestals and torn down, where real-world harm and digital speculation exist in a feedback loop of immense power. A lyric is no longer just a lyric, it can become evidence. A tattoo is no longer just personal ink, it can become a clue. The line between an artist's persona and their actual character is blurred beyond recognition. It also forces a painful reflection on the thousands of missing persons cases that never capture the national spotlight. Celeste Rivas was missing for 17 months. Her story was known to her community, to the dedicated detectives on the case, and to her family who never gave up hope. But it took a connection to a viral celebrity for her name to be screamed from the digital rooftops. How many others are still waiting? How many stories of loss remain untold because they lack a sensational hook? This is the sobering truth that lingers when the theories are spent and the headlines fade. The entertainment of a mystery versus the reality of a shortened life. The investigation continues. The LAPD continues to pursue leads, to analyze evidence, to slowly and methodically piece together the final moments of Celeste Rivas' life. They owe her and her family the truth. For now, we are left in the uneasy quiet of the unresolved. The story of Celeste Rivas and the Tesla is a puzzle with too many pieces missing. We have the heartbreaking beginning of a young life full of promise. We have the grim discovery in a place of modern innovation. We have the art that now echoes with terrible new meaning. But we do not have the answers. This story is not finished. Until investigators can share what they have learned, the questions will linger. They will linger in the minds of detectives, in the hearts of a grieving family, and in the whispers of anyone who hears a certain song on the radio and wonders what really happened. If you have any information regarding the disappearance of Celeste Rivas, we urge you to contact the Los Angeles Police Department. We encourage you to follow official channels for updates on this case, and to always approach developing stories with empathy for the victims and their families, who bear the true and lasting weight of these tragedies. The truth is out there, and it haunts. This case is far from over, and as investigators release more details, we'll be here to uncover every development. If you want to follow this haunting story as it unfolds, make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on. And let me know in the comments, what theory do you find most convincing so far? Your thoughts may help guide where we dig next. Because here at Truth That Haunts, the story doesn't end when the video does. It stays with us until the truth finally comes to light.